Good evening, class. Today we are going to discuss about the architect's guidelines. So before we start, we are going to talk about the crafting of the architect's guidelines. In compliance with Republic Act number 9266, otherwise known as the Architecture Act of 2004, the PRC through the PR BOA and the UAP, which is the Integrated and Accredited Professional Organization of Architects, or the IAPOA, embarked on the most challenging task aimed at reviewing and updating the 1979 standards of professional practice. So there exists already a standards of professional practice for architects since 1979. It's just that it needs to be modified since it is becoming obsolete. They review it not only for guiding professional performance in different settings, but also for ensuring high quality of professional services and assuring the public that the architecture profession imposes its canons of behavior not only with respect to knowledge and skills, but also with respect to integrity, independence, and commitment to quality service. The new updated SPP approved by the PRC on July 27, 2010 enjoined the UAP to craft the architect's guidelines for SPP compliances. As a result, these guidelines are promulgated to guide architects on the different applicable methods of compensation for various professional services and determining the appropriate fees for services rendered, and to serve as reference for clients in understanding the valuable work of an architect. The need to set the parameters on architects' guidelines on methods of compensation and schedule of fees is a paramount to the architect in the practice of his profession. So this is very important for our practice. This will standardize the ranges for which the client will compensate an architect in direct relation to the value of services that the architect provides. The purpose of the architect's guidelines is to complement the existing professional regulatory law governing the state-regulated practice of architecture, as governed by RA 9266, or the Architecture Act of 2004, and its derivative regulations. The Code of Ethical Standards, Standards of Professional Practice, and other related laws, policies, rules, and regulations approved and implemented by the PRC and or other concerned government entities. So let's proceed with the discussion about the guidelines on recommended professional fees of an architect. Recommended meaning it is only suggested and not strictly imposed on. This is just a guide for us architects on how we should charge our clients. The professional work of architects are classified according to the degree of complexity and the creative skill required to meet the requirements of the client. So the buildings or the structures are grouped to determine the fair remuneration for the architect. So the different buildings that architects are embarked on specific projects are being grouped. Okay, so we have two architectural services that an architect can possibly or embark into. So we have the detailed architectural and engineering design services, or what we call the DAEDs, and the detailed architectural design services, or the DADs. This is purely architectural design, and the other one is including architectural and engineering design services. Okay, so since the different buildings are being grouped, let us identify what buildings are included in each groups and how much the rate, the possible rate or the recommended rate should the architect charge to the client. So for group 1 buildings, or structures, these are buildings of the simplest utilization and character, which are without complication of plan and design or detail, and which require only a minimum of architectural finishes, engineering, and allied architectural elements. So these buildings are, for example, the armories, bakeries, habitable agricultural buildings, hangars, industrial buildings, manufacturing or industrial plants, packaging and processing plants, parking structures, printing plants, public markets, service garages, simple loft-type buildings, warehouses, and other similar utilization type buildings. So as you can observe, these are buildings that doesn't have any complication when it comes to the planning or the designing of this specific project. So it has a minimum design, it has minimum partitions or without any complication. So simple lang siya. Okay? So the recommended professional fee for these certain types of projects for the DAEDs or the detailed architectural and engineering design services, for project construction cost or PCC, that is 50 million or less, the RPF, we will call this the RPF or the recommended professional fee for these certain types of projects is 5% of the project construction cost. So for example, you have a project, maybe a warehouse that is amounting to 15 million. So 15 million times 0.05, your RPF or the recommended professional fee for the architect for this project is 750,000. That is how you compute. For projects naman over 50 million to 100 million, that is 2,500,000 plus 4% of excess of 50 million. For projects over 100 million to 200 million pesos, that is 4.5 million plus 3% of excess of 100 million. For projects over 200 million to 500 million, that is 7,500,000 plus 2% of excess of 200 million. For projects 500 million to 1 billion, that is 13,500,000 plus 1% of excess of 500 million. For projects over 1 billion, that is 18,500,000 plus half of the excess of 1 billion pesos. For services, that is only DADS or Detailed Architectural Design Services. For projects amounting to 50 million or less, that's 3%. So the project construction cost, you just multiply it to 3%. That is your RPF or your recommended professional fee. For over 50 million to 100 million, that is 1.5 million plus 2.4% of excess of 50 million. So on and so forth. You try to compute on your own how are you going to be remunerated for this specific project if this project costs, for example, this amount. Okay, so you try to compute it on your own. You have this as your guide. So again, this is only a recommended guide, so it's only suggested and not to be strictly imposed on to everyone, to every single architect. So that's just a guide. So there are architects that charge less than this rate shown. Okay, so for group 2, these are buildings of moderate complexity of plan or design, requiring a moderate amount of research and of engineering and allied architectural design. So group 2, from simple utilization character, we go now to moderate, meaning in the middle. So these buildings are art galleries, banks, exchange and other buildings, financial institutions, bolodromes, call centers, churches and religious facilities, city or town halls and civic centers, office buildings, office condominium, park, playground and open-air recreational facilities, residential condominiums, police stations, postal facilities, private clubs, publishing plants, college buildings, convents, monasteries and seminaries, correctional and detention facilities, courthouses, hall of justice, dormitories, exhibition halls and display structures, fire stations, laundries and cleaning facilities. What else? Libraries, malls or mall complexes, motels and apartels, multi-story apartments, nursing homes, racetracks, restaurants, fast food stores, retail, wholesale stores, school, service apartments, shopping centers, showrooms, service centers, specialty shops, supermarkets and hypermarts, welfare buildings, mixed-use buildings, and other buildings of similar nature or use. So, as you can observe, you have so many examples of buildings in group 2 because there are a lot of buildings that fall on this moderate complexity of plan and design. So the recommended professional fee for these certain projects, for DAEDs or for doing detailed architectural and engineering design services, if the project is 50 million and less, you charge 6% of the project construction cost. For example, the project is a school that's amounting to 15 million times 0.06 or 6%, that is equal to 900,000. Okay, for projects that is over 50 million to 100 million, the rate is a fixed amount of 3 million pesos plus 5% of excess of 50 million, and so on and so forth. For doing just detailed architectural design services, if the project is 50 million and less, the charge is 3.6% of the project construction cost, and so on and so forth. For group 3 buildings, they are buildings of exceptional character and complexity of plan and design, or requiring comparatively large amounts of research and of engineering and allied architectural design. Examples of these buildings are airports, wet and dry ports and terminals, aquariums, auditoriums, breweries, cold storage facilities, convention facilities, gymnasiums, hospitals and medical buildings, hotels, laboratories or testing facilities, marinas and resort complexes, medical arts offices and clinics, mental institutions, mortuaries, nuclear facilities, observatories, public health centers, research facilities, stadia, telecommunication buildings, theaters and similar facilities, transportation facilities and systems, veterinary hospitals, and other buildings of similar nature or use. So these are the buildings that, doesn't have a typical plan for offices or whatsoever, that you need extensive amounts of research to be able to come up with a good plan or design for this project. So the RPF, or the recommended professional fee for these specific projects, if the project is 50 million and less, the rate is 7% of the project construction cost. So for example, you have a project amounting to 25 million times 0.07, you can charge 1 million and 750,000. So for over 50 million to 100 million pesos, that is 3.5 million plus 6% of excess of 50 million, and so on and so forth. So for services, that is only detailed architectural design services. The project if the project is 50 million and less, you charge 4.2% of the project construction cost. So the cost of the project, you multiply that one to 4.2%, that is your rate as the architect doing the detailed architectural design services. Okay, so for group 4 is for the residences. May it be single attached or duplex, row houses or shop houses, small apartment houses, and townhouses. So the recommended professional fee for doing detailed architectural and engineering design services, if you are designing for a residential building and you will do the plan and design of architectural works, civil engineering works, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, electronics, the recommended professional fee for you is 10% of the project construction cost. So if the project is, or if the house costs 5 million, your rate for that is 500,000. And if you will only be doing the detailed architectural design services, you can charge 6% of the project construction cost. Okay. Next, group 5 buildings. These are monumental buildings and other facilities requiring consummate design skill and much precise detailing. So these are buildings that require thorough research and precise detailing. Example are exposition and fair buildings, mausoleums, memorials, and monuments, specialized decorative buildings, and museums. Example for museum projects, diba, you are required to do extensive detailing of the art galleries for the display area, and other buildings of similar nature or use. So the recommended professional fee for these types of projects, if you will be doing detailed architectural and engineering design services, you can charge 12% of the project construction cost. And if you're doing detailed architectural design services, you can charge 7.5% of the project construction cost. So if the project is 50 million and you will be doing DADs only, so you multiply that to 7.5%, so you can charge 3,750,000. Okay, for group 6 buildings or structures, okay, so when the plan or design and related contract documents are reused for the repetitive construction of similar buildings without amending the drawing and the specifications, the architect's fee will be computed as follows. For the first building, the recommended professional fee is 100% of RPF for type of building. So for example, a residential project amounting to 5 million. For the first building, you can charge the 100% of the recommended professional fee. So you can charge the 500,000. For the second building, if that plan and design be used, will be reused to repeat the construction of that building, you can charge for the second building 50% of RPF for type of building. So you can charge 250,000 without amending, without changing the drawings and the plans. The architect's fee will be 50% of the RPF for the type of building. For our example, which is a 5 million residential house, and if that will be repeated for the second time around, you can charge 50%, so 250,000. So for the third building, you can charge 40% of the RPF for type of building. And for the fourth and succeeding buildings, you can charge 30% of RPF for that type of building. So note, there will be a major adjustment for the professional fee depending on the site condition. Okay? So group 7, these are when the architect is engaged to undertake a housing project involving the construction of several residential units on a single site with the use of one set of plans and design, specifications, and related documents. The architect's fee chargeable shall conform with the following. So for the first unit, if you are doing the detailed architectural and engineering design services, the recommended professional fee for that is 10% of the project construction cost. But if you're doing only the architectural design services, that is 6% of the project construction cost. So these are for housing projects. Okay. So next, from 2 to 10 units, your fee will be the fee for 1 unit plus 50% of RPF for each additional unit. So that's the fee for 1 unit plus the additional 50% of the RPF. If you're doing only detailed architectural design services, your RPF will be the fee for the 1 unit plus 30% of the RPF for each additional units. For 11 units to 30 units, you can charge for the fee for 10 units plus 40% of RPF for each additional unit if you're doing detailed architectural and engineering design services. And if you're doing detailed architectural design services, you can charge for the fee of 10 units plus 24% of RPF for each additional unit. So you can do the math on your own this time for this guide. Okay? Okay, next is the Group 8 buildings or projects. These are projects involving extensive details such as designs for built-in components or elements, built-in equipment, special fittings, screens, counters, architectural interiors, and development planning and or design. So the recommended professional fee for this is 15% of the project construction cost. So whatever projects that involves extensive detailing, that includes built-in components, built-in equipments. Okay. Next is Group 9. These are projects that's for alteration, renovations, rehabilitations, retrofit, and expansion or additions to existing buildings belonging to Groups 1 to 5. So those enumerated buildings from Groups 1 to 5, if you will be doing any alterations, renovations, rehab, retrofit, or addition, the compensation of services should be increased to 50% or a total of 150% of the RPF. Okay, so the recommended professional fee for the project that is existing can be increased to 50%. So that's 150% in total. So for Group 10, okay, so when the architect is engaged to render opinion or give advice clarifications or explanation and technical matters pertaining to his profession. Also, refer to pre-design services, SPP document 201 under consultation. So this is if you are doing consultation services. The chargeable RPF shall not be less than 1,000 pesos per hour. So this is consultation services. So 1,000 pesos per hour. So there's a note right there that is subject to increase depending on the extent and coverage of service required and the location where the architect shall render his service. Okay, another service for group 10 is when an architect will render service as an expert witness in example in court proceedings for projects under arbitration. So the fee for that is the architect's fee shall not be less than 5,000 pesos per appearance. So this is regardless if as to whether the scheduled hearing took place or not. So there's additional note here that adjustment of the price shall be made at the time of the signing of the architect's contract of service. The amount excludes the cost of transportation and accommodations when and where required. Another 60% of the amount shall be charged for the travel period in case of locations that are in excess of 100 kilometers, either by air or a straight line or radial distance of the architect's office, as stated in his letterhead. So, if the location of the certain project where the architect will render his service, if the location is more than 100 kilometers away from his office, so the architect can charge an additional of 60%. Okay, so the charges and the services in group 10 will depend on the level of expertise of the architect or your level of expertise and experience as an architect. Okay, so that would be all for this topic. You will be given an assessment for the topics discussed. And if ever you have any questions, concerns, clarifications, you can always contact me through our Google Classroom or Facebook Messenger and or by email. So that's it. I'll see you on the next topic. Goodbye.